Good evening and welcome to the Sleeping Zoo. Facts to fall asleep to. The flamingo is instantly recognizable, a vision of startling pink elegance that dominates the hypersaline, alkaline, and often desolate wetlands of the world. More than just a beautiful bird, the flamingo represents an ecological paradox, a creature that thrives where almost no other vertebrate can survive. Across the 6 existing species, from the lesser flamingo of Africa's Great Rift Valley to the Andean flamingo of South America's high-altitude lakes, they exhibit a shared mastery of extreme environments, relying on a unique physiological specialization to exploit microscopic algae, a food source that is highly toxic to most other life forms. This ability to convert a harsh, hostile habitat into a reliable food source is the secret to their success and the foundation of their extraordinary life. To understand how they accomplish this, we must first examine the incredible adaptations found in their physiology. The most distinguishing features of the flamingo's physiology are directly related to its feeding apparatus and its unique coloration. The iconic pink salmon, or sometimes even deep scarlet color that defines the bird, is not endogenous. It is entirely derived from its diet. The organisms they consume, primarily blue-green algae and specialized invertebrates like brine shrimp, are rich in carotenoid pigments, the same compounds that give carrots and tomatoes their color. Once ingested, these fat-soluble pigments are metabolized by the liver, broken down into various pink and red pigments, and deposited in the feathers, skin, and even the blood. A flamingo denied access to its carotenoid-rich diet will gradually fade to a dull white or gray, underscoring the direct, vibrant link between its ecological niche and its appearance. Furthermore, a flamingo's health and reproductive fitness are directly linked to the depth of its color. Darker, richer colors often signal a healthier, more dominant bird, which is a key factor in mate selection during their collective behavior. The second remarkable physiological adaptation is the flamingo's bill, a highly specialized filtering mechanism that operates as an upside-down sieve. Unlike the beaks of most birds, the flamingo's bill is bent sharply downward in the middle. The upper mandible is smaller than the lower, and both are lined with fine hair-like structures called lamellae and fleshy, stiff plates. When feeding, the flamingo submerges its head upside down into the water, resting the top of its bill on the muddy bottom. Using a piston-like tongue, which fits perfectly into the grooved lower mandible, the bird rapidly pumps water in and out of the bill. The lamellae act like filters, trapping the tiny algae and plankton while expelling the muddy water and silt. This highly efficient, complex feeding method, known as filter feeding, allows the flamingo to sustain itself entirely on organisms only microns in size, giving it access to a massive, underutilized food resource in environments too harsh for competition from other large bird or fish species. Finally, the flamingo possesses extraordinary osmoregulatory and thermoregulatory adaptations to cope with the extreme conditions of its habitat. The high-altitude Andean lakes and the African rift valleys are often characterized by water that is highly alkaline, salt-laden, conditions lethal to most animals. The flamingo possesses specialized salt glands located in its head, above the eyes. These glands actively excrete excess salt ingested from the water and food, which drips out through the nostrils, allowing the bird to safely drink and filter the toxic saline water. The long, thin legs, often utilized for standing, are also a physiological challenge. To conserve heat in cold conditions, or to prevent overheating in shallow, sun-warmed water, flamingos employ a mechanism known as the rete mirabilie, a heat exchange system composed of fine networks of arteries and veins in the legs. This system allows the bird to maintain its core body temperature by restricting the flow of warm blood to the extremities, enabling it to stand for long periods on one leg, a behavioral trait that aids in minimizing heat loss or gain. The behavior of the flamingo is dominated by two central defining features: its extreme sociability and its synchronized reproductive rituals. Flamingos are obligate flocking birds. They cannot survive alone and live in colonies that often number in the tens of thousands, sometimes exceeding 1 million individuals, as seen with the lesser flamingos of Lake Natron in Tanzania. This colonial behavior is not merely for social interaction, but is a crucial survival strategy that serves several functions. Firstly, it offers enhanced protection from predators. The sheer number of eyes and the coordinated vigilance of the flock mean that individual risk is dramatically reduced. Secondly, it is a key component of their foraging strategy. A massive flock feeding together can stir up the sediment on the lake bed, dislodging the microscopic algae and bringing it into the water column, making the filter feeding process more efficient for all members. The most extraordinary aspect of flamingo behavior is their highly synchronized, elaborate courtship ritual, which involves the entire colony. This is not a private pair bonding event, but a mass display designed to bring thousands of birds into reproductive synchrony. The ritual involves several distinct choreographed movements, performed simultaneously by groups of hundreds or thousands of birds. We will describe these in turn. Head flagging is a rapidly swiveling the head from side to side, showing off the bright neck colors. Wing saluting is a flashing the black primary and secondary flight feathers by briefly opening and closing the wings. Twist preening is when a flamingo rapidly preens the feathers just under the tail, highlighting the brightly colored area of the plumage. Parade marching is a synchronized slow-motion walk with their necks outstretched, which strengthens social bonds and stimulates reproductive hormones. This mass display ensures that the entire colony breeds at the same time, maximizing the chances of offspring survival. Once mated, the birds nest in dense, secure groups on mudflats or small islands, building distinctive mud nests, small, truncated cones of mud and straw that elevate the single egg above the potentially flooding or toxic water. Both parents share incubation duties. This intense social environment, which is necessary for their successful breeding, is intrinsically tied to the unique and often precarious habitat where they thrive. The habitat of the flamingo is characterized by the very conditions that exclude most other life: hypersaline, shallow, and highly alkaline water bodies. The 6 species of flamingo are distributed across 4 main geographical areas, each presenting extreme environmental challenges. The African Rift Valley Lakes is the stronghold of the lesser flamingo, which flocks in enormous numbers to exploit the microscopic blue-green spirulina algae that flourish in the hot, high pH, sodium carbonate-rich waters. The alkalinity of Lake Natron is so extreme that it can calcify and mummify animals that fall in. Yet the flamingo's specialized physiology allows it to use this as a secure, predator-free nursery. The South American Altiplano Lakes is home to the Andean, James's, and Chilean flamingos. These environments are high altitude, resulting in extremely low oxygen levels, intense UV radiation, and freezing nighttime temperatures. The shallow saline lakes offer a rich supply of diatoms and microscopic invertebrates, but the birds must cope with intense cold and often volatile water levels. In the Caribbean and Yucatan Peninsula, Caribbean flamingo is found where it prefers coastal lagoons, mangroves, and estuarine mudflats, where the water is less alkaline but still saline, providing a reliable food source of brine, shrimp, and small aquatic organisms. The Mediterranean and Asia is home to the greater flamingo, a highly adaptable species utilizing coastal lagoons, salt pans, and large, shallow lakes, often tolerating more seasonal variation in salinity and water depth than its African cousins. The critical feature linking all these disparate habitats is shallow water depth and low predator pressure. The shallow water is essential for the filter feeding mechanism to reach the bottom where the algae and plankton concentrate. The hypersaline or alkaline nature of the water acts as a natural defense system, creating a vast, inhospitable barrier that deters mammalian predators like jackals, foxes, or hyenas, allowing the large, slow-moving colonies to breed with relative security. However, this dependence on highly specific, often volcanically or climatically sensitive water bodies makes the flamingo's ecology extremely fragile and susceptible to external disturbances. The ecology of the flamingo is fundamentally defined by its role as an extreme specialist consumer and its profound impact on the nutrient cycling of its often barren wetland habitat. Flamingos occupy a very low trophic level, essentially acting as the primary grazers of the water column. Their specialized filter feeding allows them to harvest microorganisms that are inaccessible to nearly all other animals. This consumption has several massive ecological impacts, such as water clarification. By filtering out vast quantities of suspended algae and plankton, large flamingo flocks significantly increase the clarity of the water column. Flamingos are active in nutrient cycling. In this process, the waste products of guano is produced by the massive colonies, introduce significant quantities of nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, back into the shallow water system. This effectively fertilizes the lake bed, stimulating the growth of the very algae that sustain the birds. This creates a powerful, self-sustaining positive feedback loop. More flamingos mean more nutrients, which means more algae, which in turn supports a larger population. This loop is the basis for the incredible biological productivity of seemingly sterile environments like Lake Nakuru. Finally, bioturbation is a huge ecological impact. The constant churning of the lakebed mud by thousands of legs and bills during feeding, known as bioturbation, helps to oxygenate the surface sediments, which can influence the bottom-dwelling invertebrate communities, though this effect is often destructive to sensitive microbial mats. However, the flamingo also serves as prey, primarily for opportunistic avian predators. During the breeding season, when the single egg and the vulnerable chick are left unguarded by the parents, the greatest threats come from large gulls, raptors like the fish eagle, and occasionally marabou storks, which prey on the young. Once a chick has fledged, its main threat in the wild comes from the African fish eagle or terrestrial predators, such as the jackal, which may exploit periods of low water when the birds cannot retreat to their safe, deep areas. The most dramatic ecological vulnerability is the dependency on the stability of the water body. Because the algae and brine shrimp require a specific range of salinity and pH to thrive, any sudden shift caused by excessive rainfall diluting the lake, or prolonged drought concentrating the salts to lethal levels, can lead to catastrophic food shortages, forcing the entire colony to abandon the site in search of a new, suitable lake, an ecological necessity that puts immense pressure on conservation efforts when suitable alternative sites are scarce or non-existent. The conservation status of the 6 flamingo species varies significantly, from the widespread and stable greater flamingo to the highly threatened Andean and puna known as the James's flamingos. 2 species, the Andean flamingo and James's flamingo, are currently listed as vulnerable or near threatened due to specific threats in their unique high-altitude habitat. The primary conservation challenge for flamingos lies not in controlling direct human predation, but in managing the delicate and often distant environmental factors that govern the health of their extreme wetland habitats. The foremost threat is habitat degradation and resource extraction, particularly in the South American Altiplano. The vast mineral-rich salt pans and lakes where Andean and James's flamingos breed and feed are the target of large-scale mining operations, primarily for lithium and borax. The extraction of these minerals often requires massive amounts of water, which is pumped directly from the shallow lakes, reducing the water level and concentrating the remaining salts to toxic levels. This not only destroys the delicate algae and plankton food source, but also leaves the nesting mudflats dry and vulnerable to terrestrial predators, directly compromising the breeding success of the entire population. The second major threat is water fluctuations driven by both climate change and local infrastructure. Changes in rainfall patterns, accelerated by climate change, lead to more frequent and extreme flooding or desiccation of the shallow lakes. When a lake dries up, the colony is forced to undertake long, energetically costly migrations to find new, suitable feeding sites, leading to massive chick mortality and increased adult vulnerability. Local diversion of water for irrigation or human consumption further exacerbates the problem, undermining the natural hydrological cycle that maintains the precise salinity required for the algae to thrive. The third threat is human disturbance during the crucial breeding season. Because flamingos rely on large, concentrated colonies for their social and reproductive success, they are exceptionally sensitive to human presence near nesting sites. Activities like tourism, bird watching, or even low-flying aircraft can cause thousands of birds to panic and abandon their nests, leaving eggs and young chicks exposed to predators and harsh weather. This sensitivity necessitates the strict designation and enforcement of exclusion zones around key breeding sites. Conservation strategies for flamingos are highly international and focus on wetland preservation and transboundary cooperation. The Flamingo Specialist Group, part of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, works to coordinate census data collection and research across the multiple countries where these birds live. Efforts focus on monitoring and managing water resources, in which organizations, working with governments and mining companies to establish sustainable water extraction quotas and protecting inflow rivers. Protecting critical breeding sites by establishing legally protected reserves around the few stable breeding grounds, such as Lake Natron. And finally reducing the incidence of lead poisoning in Europe and Asia, where some flamingos ingest lead shot left behind by hunters in shallow wetlands. The success of flamingo conservation relies on recognizing the fragile, interconnected nature of their ecology and the vulnerability inherent in their highly social, specialized life cycle, a recognition that is increasingly reflected in their representation in popular culture, folklore, and legend. The flamingo's highly visible pink color and unique, often comical physical profile have given it a prominent, if somewhat lighthearted, role in popular culture, folklore, and legend, often symbolizing beauty, balance, and eccentric elegance. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the flamingo held a special significance, representing the sun god Ra. Its long legs and neck, emerging from the water at dawn, were seen as an embodiment of the first rays of the sun, rising from the watery chaos. The bird's color linked it to the fiery sun disk, giving it a sacred status and symbolizing creation. This deep connection to a creation myth instilled a long-standing reverence for the bird in the Nile region. The most pervasive and recognized image of the flamingo in modern popular culture is the plastic pink lawn ornament. Invented in 1957 by Don Featherstone, this kitschy, inexpensive decoration became an iconic symbol of suburban eccentricity and 1950s Americana. Its mass-market ubiquity ironically transformed a rare, wild creature into a readily available symbol of flamboyant, slightly tacky taste. The plastic flamingo has since been reclaimed as a symbol of irony and rebellion against conformity, demonstrating how cultural symbols can evolve far beyond their biological reality. In literature and art, the flamingo frequently represents the bizarre, the surreal, and the unexpected. Its most famous literary appearance is in Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, where it is notoriously used as a temperamental, awkward croquet mallet. This depiction captures the absurdity of the flamingo's proportions, emphasizing its status as an oddity of nature that struggles to fit into conventional rules. Beyond mythology and novelty, the flamingo's striking appearance has historically made it a commodity and continues to make it a high-value cultural icon, directly impacting its conservation history. The very color that signals reproductive health became a death sentence during the 19th and early 20th centuries, when flamingos, particularly the Caribbean species, were heavily hunted for their feathers and, sometimes, for their tongues, which were considered a delicacy. These vibrant plumes were desperately sought after for the booming millinery trade in Europe and North America, used to adorn fashionable women's hats. This mass slaughter drastically reduced Caribbean flamingo populations in particular, making the bird an early, if unintentional, symbol of the excesses of the fashion industry, and directly contributing to the need for early conservation laws and the establishment of protected zones, like the Inagua National Park in the Bahamas. Ironically, the flamingo has now been fully embraced by modern fashion and design as a decorative motif, notably by the very group. Shedding its dark past to represent tropical luxury, playful elegance, and vibrant maximalism. The tropical appeal of the bird in fashion and interior design is often used to evoke a sense of carefree, warm weather paradise. Finally, the flamingo's visually distinct nature and high ecological visibility make it an ideal brand animal for numerous organizations, especially those focused on avian conservation and wetland protection, such as the IUCN Flamingo Specialist Group. Its vibrant health and deep color act as a powerful, unambiguous visual indicator of a successful habitat restoration project and a thriving, complex-selling ecosystem. In conclusion, the cultural image of the flamingo is complex. It is simultaneously a symbol of divine creation, a marker of ecological health, and a signifier of suburban quirkiness. This diverse cultural footprint, fueled by its spectacular physiology and visually striking behavior, ensures that the flamingo remains a powerful tool for conservation advocacy. Its vivid color, a direct result of its specialized ecology in extreme habitats, serves as a visual indicator of the health of the very few specialized wetlands it requires. If the pink fades, it is a clear, unambiguous signal that the ecosystem is failing, making the bird itself a vital living flag for the health of the world's most extreme and fragile saline environments. The effort to save the flamingo is therefore an effort to save the entire ecosystem it represents, a vibrant testament to the resilience of life in the face of chemical adversity. The flamingo is an ecological marvel whose unique physiology, including its carotenoid-derived pink coloration and its specialized lamellae-lined filter feeding bill, allows it to thrive in hypersaline and alkaline water bodies that are toxic to most other lives. This specialization dictates a behavior of intense, synchronized coloniality necessary for both defense and successful, coordinated reproduction through elaborate courtship rituals. The flamingo's success depends entirely on its highly specific, shallow habitat in the Rift Valley, Altiplano, or coastal lagoons, areas characterized by high mineral content that discourages predation. Ecologically, the flamingo functions as a primary consumer and a keystone species whose vast feeding activities and waste products create a crucial, self-sustaining nutrient cycling loop vital to the health of its wetland. However, the species faces existential conservation threats from resource extraction, like lithium mining and climate-induced water fluctuations that destroy its fragile food source. From its ancient connection to the sun god Ra in folklore to its history as an object of exploitation in the feather trade and its modern role as a ubiquitous cultural icon, the flamingo's survival remains a critical measure of humanity's ability to protect the most extreme and delicate ecosystems on Earth. Thank you and good night.